friends, welcome back to my channel. This is Sharon from Mad Paper Crush. Today I would like to do a little video on making library pockets. So I love adding library pockets as part of embellishments in journals that I do. Sometimes I put them down on a page, or sometimes I just leave them as a pocket to hold different types of ephemera just within the book, clipped in the book or something like that. So today we're going to do two types of library pockets. One we're going to make from scratch, and the other one we're going to do from a digital kit. So in several of my digital kits, I like to add library pockets into the digital kit. So this will be showing you how to use the pieces from a digital kit to make a library pocket as well. So we'll do two different kinds. If you don't have a digital kit, you can make one from scratch just using scrapbook paper or any kind of paper that you have around. So let's go ahead and get started and make some library pockets. Okay, the tools and supplies that we're going to need to make our own library pocket is a cutter of some sort. You could certainly use scissors for the whole thing. You'll need to measure so that we have the right size in the beginning. So I'm just going to use my Fiskars cutter here. And then also, besides, I will probably also be using scissors for something else. But I'm, just putting that you could definitely do this project with just scissors if you wanted to. And then also I'm going to be using my scoreboard and a scorer to score the paper, but you definitely don't need this as well. You could just use a ruler, to make a straight score on your paper as well. Also some glue. We need some glue. And then for decoration, obviously anything you'd like to collage or do on top of the front and even the back of the library pocket, you need those things as well. And then one sheet of cardstock. So I'm going to use, it's not a heavy cardstock, it's a light cardstock, but it'll give the pocket just the nice body that I'm looking for. So that's what we need to get started. Okay, so the library pockets that I normally put into my digital kits, I usually make them to be a final size of 5 inches tall by about 3.5 inches wide. And that fits a 3-inch wide due date card just about perfectly. And most of the time due date cards are about 3 by 5. So it fits in there, just perfectly. But for making your library pocket from scratch, you can obviously make it whatever size you would like to do that. So you just need to kind of know what to add on to your dimensions to create the size that you want. So for the one that I'm doing here, I want my final dimensions of the pocket to be 6 inches tall by 3.5 inches wide. So what I'm going to do, now this cardstock that I'm using is actually double-sided. You don't have to use double-sided if you don't want to, but I thought it might be fun to have, the one side of the pocket have this pattern and then the front of the pocket have the other pattern since they, they go together. So to add to my dimensions, I want it to be 6 inches tall. I'm going to add 3 inches because that's going to be the size of my pocket face, okay, on there. And then I'm also going to take into consideration a flap at the bottom, which is going to be 1/4 inch. So I'm going to cut the length of my pocket. I want it to be 9.25 inches tall, and then for the width, we need to have flaps on either side to fold in to hold our pocket. And so I'm just going to add 1/2 inch so that would be 1/4 inch for each side of the pocket. So the final dimensions of the paper that we're going to cut for our initial cut is going to be 9.25 by 4 inches wide. And we're going to cut this down, but this is our starting point. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to start with my 4-inch cut so that I can save the rest of this paper for doing some other things with. And then for my height, I'm going to do 9.25 inches tall. Okay, and then our next cut is just going to be to cut the 3-inch pocket face off of this 9¼ inch piece of cardstock. So I'm going to kind of decide, because I think I want the front face to be these cute little skeletons here. So I think I'm going to decide, you know, by just putting it in here, I want it to be 3 inches wide. Where is that going to cut? I think that looks okay. It doesn't have to be, you know, perfect, because I'm probably going to add some other collage elements to this. So there's my 3-inch piece. Now, because this front face, we want it to be 3½ inches wide, I do need to cut this down a little bit. So because this is now separated, I can just cut it down to 3 inches. If you, or I'm sorry, 3½ inches. So if you want to cut off, you know, 1/4 inch off of both sides, depending on your pattern, you could do that. My pattern's pretty even across. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut the 1/2 inch off of one side. So now we have our pocket front ready to go. Now for the base piece, for the pocket piece, I'm going to bring out my scoreboard. Okay, so now we're going to create some side flaps for our pocket. Now, the reason I do this is because I like these library pockets to have a little bit of space inside them. You could have left this piece on, so we could have just cut it at 9 inches, and you could have just folded this over to create, you know, to create the pocket here, and, you know, could have glued it on the sides and whatever. But to me, that doesn't leave enough space if I wanted to maybe, you know, stuff it with a couple of different things. So that's why we're doing it this way. But you could certainly do it the other way if you wanted to have something quick and easy to put together. So now that I have my 4-inch piece, I need to create my flaps so that we can have a little space inside of our pocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to score this piece at 1/4 inch on either side and on the bottom of this piece. So I have to decide which way I want it, upside down, right side up. Since these skeletons are kind of all over the place, it doesn't really matter, but your pattern may matter. So I'm just going to put this on my 6-inch line, and then I'm going to find my 1/4 inch from one edge. And then I'll just flip it around because that makes it easier for me. I'm going to do another score at 1/4 inch on the other edge. And then when we decide the top and the bottom, I'm going to do one more 1/4 inch. I'm going to put this back at 2 and just do 1/4 inch on the bottom. Okay. So that's where we are now. All right, so now we're going to do a little bit more cutting because we don't need flaps all the way up and down the whole sides of our pocket. We just need them at the bottom to hold our pocket face on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my embossing board away here and bring my cutter back out. And since this is a 3-inch pocket, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little mark. Probably the easiest way to do this. I'm going to make a mark 3 inches up from my bottom score line, so I know where to cut off the top part of my flaps at. So there's, you know, lots of different ways you could do this. I think I have a white grease pencil here. That might be the easiest way. I don't know which side's going to show it better. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on my mat. And I'm going to make sure I have my bottom score lined up with one of my grid lines here. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 inches up so that and I'm just putting kind of a soft mark here so I know how far to go. And then all I'm going to do with my cutter is I'm going to line this up. And I'm just going to make sure I don't cut into the pocket itself. I'm just going to cut a little bit in here so I know where to stop. And same thing with the bottom. I'm just cutting a little bit in so I know where to stop cutting. Okay, so you can see, hopefully, I have my little cut right there for us to know where to go down to. So now you could either do your scissors or you could do your cutter. I'm just going to cut on this score line on either side of the top portion. So make sure you're not cutting from the bottom where we have our bottom flap. Okay, so I'm going to cut that off. And since I have my line on there, I know exactly where I can cut to. And that should come right out. And then we'll do the other side as well. I think I'm going to turn this around. It'll be a little bit easier for me. And now you can kind of line it up because we know that we want this to be 3 3/4. I'm just lining it up on the little line there. And there's my other side cut off. Okay, so now you can see we have the top part of our pocket ready to go, and then we have the bottom part for our flaps. Now, this is where I am going to use my scissors. So what I want to do is I'm going to make sure my flaps don't show once I fold them in and put my front face on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut a little tiny notch off of, let me grab a piece of paper here so you can kind of see that, an angled edge, a little notch off of the top portions of these flaps. Okay, so I have that shape. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut notches off of the other parts too, which really just means cutting out this little square that's in the corner. So I'm going to cut diagonally into the corner and then diagonally out so that I have a notch on both sides of that. And the same thing over here, I'm going to start and cut diagonally into the corner where my score lines meet and then diagonally out, so that I have those notches. So now you can decide which, side you want to be your back and your front. So I was thinking I was going to do like this, but I think I may have the skeletons on the back and the stripes on the front. I think that's kind of fun. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold your flaps into the front part of your pocket, and this is going to be where we'll put our pocket face on, just like that. Now, before you do that, you may want to add some things to your pocket. So if you're going to do some collage or different things like that, you could do that now. Now, as I'm looking at this, because I cut the flaps off separate from the front, it looks like I might just be a teeny tiny bit over on my length there. So we'll just cut a little bit more off of this front piece to make sure it's not hanging over the edge. So I'm just going to try and cut, I don't even know if it's 1/8 of an inch that I'm going to try and cut off here. Just a little tiny bit. And I'd rather do less than more because, of course, you can't get it back after you cut it off. There, that seems to fit better. All right. Okay, and our last step to finish this pocket off is to glue it down. Now, I always like to glue on the flaps because then I know I'm not going to overstep my glue and get it on the back of the pocket, which might end up gluing it together. So I'm just putting a little bit of this glitter glue on each of the flaps. And then we will carefully put this down. And I'm just going to hold it a second because the edges tend to want to flop up until the glue grabs the paper. So we're going to just hold that a minute. And let me find my needle. Okay, and now the pocket is basically done. I need to do some decorating on here. but the pocket is together. And you can see I have some room now because of those flaps. So I can put a couple things in there if I wanted to. And the other thing, the last thing that I'm going to do, but you certainly don't have to do this, is I'm going to add some rounded corners. I just like the way rounded corners look, and I think I'm going to use this size on a library pocket. And now my background is dark, but this pocket is ready for some decoration. Okay. We're going to put together this library pocket as well, just so you can see, if you have one of my kits, how I would go about doing it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut out all of the pieces. All right, now that we have our pieces all cut out, I am going to grab my vintage photo distress ink because I printed this on just regular, well, I printed it on presentation paper, which is a little bit heavier than copy paper, but it's one-sided, obviously. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do our folds first. You can either use a scoreboard to do the folds, or you could just use a ruler. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to first try to line this up so that I don't make a crooked line, crooked fold, which, you know, I'm sure I've done many, 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 many times. Okay, and so basically all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this flap up from the bottom here, from right where the two cut lines meet, right to this point at the end. So I'm just going to line up my ruler on those 2 points, and then I'm just going to give myself a little fold there so I know where I'm going to be folding. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to line it up on my grid. It makes it a little bit easier for me. And then I'm going to line up my ruler at the point here where these two cuts meet and the point at the very bottom of the pocket. And just make a little crease there so I know where to fold. Okay, and then the next crease we need to make is actually right across the bottom here on these 2 points. So right where the pocket comes down and then starts to go out to the flaps, we're going to make a score line there so I know where to fold that. So I'm just doing these a little, just kind of gently until we get started. Okay, so now this is going to be our pocket. So we're going to fold this over, and this is going to be our bottom. And then we're going to fold these in to make our pocket and give us a little room there. Okay, so just like that. So now this is where we would put our front face on here. And this is why I have my distress ink out, because this is, you know, it's so white here the back of my paper, I want to distress it a bit so that that part doesn't show. And I'm just going to grab some deli paper here. And I'm just going to distress the edges of this entire bottom part. And now most of the time when I use library pockets, I put them on a page. You know, I glue them down to a page so I don't have to worry about, you know, doing the entire back of this. But I will make sure I get all my edges done so that none of that will show. And I will even do a little distress around the back of the pocket just to kind of pull everything together. I like the way that looks. Add a little here and there, a little distressing. And then we'll also make sure I distress the pocket front. And I don't know if it looks like I may have cut it a little bit wide. We'll have to see. And if I did, then I will recut and re-distress. But I'm hoping that this is pretty good. I saw some white on the edges, so we'll have to see how it fits. Okay. So now we have our pocket, and this is how it's going to look. We have the front nice and distressed so that if anything decides to peek out, you won't really be able to tell. And I think that fits on there. That'll fit just nicely. So I don't think I need to cut it down at all. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this down. And once again, I'm just going to glue on the flaps so that I don't get glue on places where I don't want glue. That seems like a reasonable thing to want, right? Don't get glue where you don't want glue. And I'm just going to make sure this is lined up. And then I will add glue to the front of my pocket, and I will add the front face as well. And we'll just make sure I get things lined up right where I want them. This glue grabs pretty quick, so you kind of have to be careful with that. Okay. And there is our second pocket, and as you can see, this one is, get the right side of my ruler going here. It's about 5 inches by 3.5 almost. And so my due date card with my little snakes on there fits right in there. And there is how to fold a library pocket from one of my digital kits. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do before I finish up these pockets is I'm going to add some decoration to them. So my digital kit one already has a little bit of a decoration to it, so we may not need to add much there, but I do want to add some to the one that I made with my cardstock. So I just pulled out some little bits here to kind of see what I can do with things. I pulled out a page from Frankenstein, so I thought that would be fun to add onto these sort of Halloween-y themed pockets here. So I also pulled out some labels from my Shiver kit because I think it's fun to add different things, you know, onto different parts of the pocket. So I was thinking this might be fun so that when you have something in the pocket, it would be hidden, but then you have a fun little label here on the back of that. So let me go ahead and I'll get that one started. And we will figure out where that should go. I think sometimes it's hard to know when to stop adding things. And it's certainly something I believe that's, you know, a personal preference. You can add as much as you want or as little as you want. And I think it all turns out to be lovely. I mean, this is your art and you can do with it what you will. So I like the way that looks there, and it kind of offsets this label. So when I have something in there, it'll be a bit hidden. But then when it comes out, maybe we can figure out a word or something to stamp there, but I think that would be fun. All right, and this other one, I pulled out some more labels from the Shiver kit, and I thought these two young men looked a little eerie. So I thought I would use them on here as well. I thought that would be fun. And then I was going to use a little bit of my Frankenstein. Let's see. Let's see what the, oh look, and this part of the page talks about the child, and as I fixed my eyes on the child. So I think that would be fun since I have two children here. And I'm thinking maybe just across the bottom might be fun to have something. So let's just try to keep the word child around. And then, actually I don't like that little piece sticking out there. Maybe when I put this down, you may not even end up seeing it, but look, I'm covering it up anyway. That's okay. I like that. So now I'm going to grab a different distress since this one is black. Let's see if I can find the one I'm looking for. There we go. I'm going to use some black soot for this one. And I'm just going to use a little bit on the edges here. I don't think I want too much. But I definitely want some on my book page. Maybe a little around the edges. Make it look a little burnt. And then I'm just carefully going to try to distress my little dolls here without getting too much on their faces. And then I'm also going to, let's see if I can find a little scrap piece of paper. Let's see if I can use this. I'm just going to fold this up a little. Actually, I don't even need to do that. I just want to distress the edges of this pocket, and since I didn't do it before I added it on, I'm just going to, I got the top there, and then we'll add some around the edges. There we go. Nice and sooty. Okay, so now I can add my collage elements here. I'm just going to lay this down to kind of decide where I want it to be sure. I think I like that. Okay, so there's my front, looking pretty good. And now I also just pulled this little label out. It has a little owl on there because I thought it might be fun to add something to the back of this one as well. So now this one, I think I am going to just cut this down a little bit more, right up close to the edges of the frame. And we will, you guessed it, distress it. And then I'm going to decide kind of where I want this, and I'm going to wrap it around the back. So I think I'm going to leave some of him on the front. Make sure and then I'm going to try and straighten my fold, because once again, I folded it a little, started it a little crooked. And then I will add some glue. Now this one might be fun. We could, this one doesn't have to be stuck down onto a journal page or the back of a journal or something like that. This one might be fun just paper clipped in, or with a little bulldog clip clipped in somewhere to kind of hold, you know, something you could pull out. So I love the way that one turned out as well. All right, friends, here they are, all nice and decorated. So I'll just kind of show you what I did. So for this one, I added my due date card. I just added some distress around the sides. I didn't do too much else for that, but I also added in a little tag with a stamp, and I put another label on the back there from my Shiver labels. So that is our pocket that we made from a digital kit. And then this one, I also finished embellishing and decorating. I made a little tag to go in that one. And I used some more of the paper from the same paper pack, so they kind of match. I like the way they look there. And I wanted to kind of have a shock of color. And this also matches the beak and the feet of this bird here. And I put another label on the back of that. So, and I wanted to show you, I did use that Frankenstein page, and I was able to keep the word out so you could see it there. So I thought that was fun. So there you have it, my friends, library pockets from a digital kit and also made from scratch. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would love it if you would give me a thumbs up. And I've linked all of the different kits and things that I've used in all of the embellishing and for the labels and for this library pocket. I've linked them all down below if you're interested in checking those out. Have a great week, friends. I will see you in the next video. Take care.